It's crazy to think that I first experienced the Mario vs. Donkey Kong formula when Donkey Kong 94 released for the original Game Boy. Since then, Nintendo's released 7 games into the Mario vs. DK series across the GBA, DS, and 3DS, with the last entry coming to both the Wii U and 3DS 8 years ago, back in 2016. When the Mario vs. DK GBA remake was announced for Switch last year, I immediately wondered how the simplistic yet rewarding puzzle platformer would hold up in 2024, especially with it being a remake of a GBA game. I mean, it's not often that we see GBA games get the remake treatment, right? Sure, we've had plenty of GameCube and even a few 3DS remakes on the Switch, and I will say that many of them have turned out to be absolutely amazing. Take Metroid Prime for example. But how well could a 20-year-old GBA game translate to the Nintendo Switch? Could Nintendo add enough magic to the Mario vs. DK formula to justify fans spending $50 on a 20-year-old GBA remake? Let's dig in and find out. In Mario vs. DK, Mario is the owner of Mario's Toy Company, a toy enterprise in which he sells a series of small wind-up toys called Mini Marios. After seeing a television advertisement for the Mini Marios, Donkey Kong immediately falls in love with the toys and sets out to the toy store to get one for himself, only to find out that they're completely sold out. Furious, Donkey Kong breaks into Mario's toy factory across the street and steals all of the Mini Marios, prompting Mario to chase after Donkey Kong to get his toys back. Now that is the premise of the entire story, and as you guys know, Mario games don't need much of a story, especially for something like a puzzle platformer. Mario vs. DK really shines in the gameplay department, so let's dive in and talk a little bit about all the great things you have to look forward to here. Now, the premise of Mario vs. DK has us navigating Mario through a variety of levels to obtain the key to unlock the level's door. After Mario enters the door, we are then tasked with the second part of the level, where our mission is to collect the stolen Mini Mario toy. Additionally, each level has 3 presents for us to collect, but obtaining the presents will require additional platforming and puzzle solving. Collecting each level's presents is very similar to collecting the red coins and flowers in Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island on Super Nintendo, and you're going to want to obtain all 3 presents for every level in order to unlock post-game content, which I'll touch on more later in the review. Each world consists of 6 main levels plus 1 bonus level, 1 level where Mario has to lead all the Mini Marios he's collected into a toy chest while protecting them from enemies and obstacles, and then the final level of each world is a boss fight against Donkey Kong. The base game consists of 8 worlds, so you can expect 64 levels plus 8 bonus levels, but after you beat the game, there's still more levels, and I'll talk to you about that more in the replayability chapter of the review. As gamers, I think one thing we can all agree on is that we enjoy games that offer a wide variety of environments, enemies, obstacles, puzzles, and level design. Each world introduces new obstacles or mechanics in order to solve the puzzle, which really help to keep the game feeling fresh from beginning to end. For example, a world may introduce mechanics like adding flowers with air tunnels, or springs, bombs with breakable walls, warp boxes, laser beams, conveyor belts with switch boxes to change the conveyor's direction, and more, while other worlds might introduce environmental obstacles like ice platforms that make moving and jumping with Mario all the more challenging to climbing and jumping from vines while trying to avoid the birds that poop out eggs on you, just like we did in Donkey Kong Jr. These mechanics and obstacles are evenly distributed and spread throughout each world, which is why the game never got stale. Another gameplay element that really helped keep things fresh is that many levels scaled either horizontally or vertically, making for larger stages, and thankfully, Nintendo built in the ability for players to press and hold down the R button, which stops the timer and allows us to view the entire stage, which becomes even more important as the challenge increases later on in the game. Talking now about the game's graphics, I think the game looks great for being a puzzle platformer. Mario vs. DK is not intended to look as good as, say, a game like Super Mario Wonder, but I can confidently say that Mario vs. DK's aesthetic and character model designs look way better in comparison to, say, like the new Super Mario Bros. Series games. Diving in now to the soundtrack, I've got a fun fact to share with you guys. So the original soundtrack was created by a man named Lawrence Schwedler, whom at the time was working for NST, which stands for Nintendo Software Technology, as an audio director and composer. So for those unfamiliar with NST, trust me, you know who they are. NST was formed by Nintendo back in 1998 and has developed games for every Nintendo platform since the N64. To name just a few, they developed Wave Race Blue Storm, 1080 Avalanche, Pokemon Puzzle League, all the Mario vs. DK games, Super Mario Maker for the 3DS, Captain Toad Treasure Tracker for both the 3DS and Switch. They aided in the development of Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, and most recently they helped to develop F-Zero 99. Lawrence Schwedler worked for NST from April 1999 to July 2012. When he left Nintendo, he didn't completely leave Nintendo. He actually went on to become a program director for DigiPen's audio degree programs. DigiPen Institute of Technology is a private university in Redmond, Washington, right next to Nintendo, and the university actually shared the same office space with Nintendo for many years. DigiPen eventually partnered with Nintendo of America to establish a certification program in video game programming. So when Nintendo decided to remake Mario vs. DK for Switch, they made a call to Lawrence over at DigiPen and asked him if he would be interested in adapting and reproducing the original game's soundtrack that he had created nearly 2 decades ago. Lawrence was quoted as saying, "I'm still pinching myself. I can't quite believe it. This was the opportunity of a lifetime." So when you roll credits on the game, you'll not only find Lawrence's name featured, but also those of 11 fellow faculty members, nearly the entirety of DigiPen's Department of Music, enlisted through Lawrence's sound production company to arrange, compose, engineer, and perform for the game's updated hi-fi soundtrack. With all that said, the soundtrack is absolutely brilliant and fits the game perfectly, and I just thought that was a really cool story I wanted to share with you guys about the soundtrack. So, who's this game for, right? Well, I would say it's for fans of puzzle games, anyone who enjoys Nintendo's charm, fans of Mario and DK obviously, but more specifically, fans of Donkey Kong Jr., Donkey Kong 94, platformer fans. There's a lot of classic elements from those games that are really expanded upon in Mario vs. DK. Diving in now to the game's difficulty, I would say the difficulty scales really well in Mario vs. DK. By the time I got to the latter levels, starting with World 5 and up, the puzzles begin to add more layers and mechanics to them, which caused me to press the R button often to zoom out and view the whole level, so I could attempt to drop a strategy in my head, and even still, my strategies didn't always work, and I liked that it really made me think and then rethink my moves and strategies. One thing to note is that Nintendo offers up 2 different difficulty levels, and you can adjust the difficulty at any point in your playthrough. So if the game starts to feel too tough, or if you want more of a challenge, you can change the difficulty level. In the casual mode, if you're hit by an enemy, you'll turn into a bubble, just like you would in Super Mario 3D World instead of dying. Now, I chose to play on Classic mode, which is the standard difficulty, and by the time the credits rolled, I had more than 70 lives remaining, if that gives you any idea as to where the difficulty level is. But again, a lot of the difficulty is going to lie in the puzzling and platforming and trying to figure out how to get through a lot of these levels. All right, let's talk about the game's overall content and replay value, as Nintendo really delivered in this area. So after you complete the main game's 64 levels and the credits roll, a new Plus mode will open up for all standard levels that is completely different from the original 64 levels, as well as an expert mode. Now, I figured the Plus levels would be harder versions of the original levels, but that wasn't the case, as the Plus levels are actually completely different from the original 64 levels. On top of that, Mini Mario is incorporated into each level, making it vastly different from the original set of levels, since you now have to carefully navigate Mario and Mini Mario to the finish line. Each Plus level is only one screen, whereas the standard levels consist of two screens, one where you get the key to unlock the door, and the second screen where you save Mini Mario. Given that each level is only one screen, you can complete the Plus levels in about half the amount of time as the original 64 levels. But even though these levels seem to be a lot quicker, they are still a ton of fun and offer up a different kind of challenge. Then we have the expert mode. Now, the expert mode levels unlock based on how many stars you've collected in the standard playthrough and Plus mode playthrough. Stars are awarded when you complete a level and collect all the presents. So if you collect, say, 1 of 3 presents in a level, you'll receive 1 out of 3 stars for said level. There is a total of 16 expert levels for you to unlock. So if you get all the stars in both the standard and Plus mode playthrough, you will unlock all 16 additional expert levels, giving us a grand total of 136 levels, not counting the bonus levels. These 16 expert levels are completely unique, and they stay true to their titling, as these levels offer up the biggest jump in overall difficulty, and in my opinion were a ton of fun. They definitely felt like expert levels. Additionally, if you 100% the game by completing all the levels, you will unlock the real ending, so there's definitely incentive to try and 100% the game. Diving in now to the game's emotion and charm, and as it is with most Nintendo games, Mario vs. DK made me smile a whole lot with its simple yet clever gameplay and level design, especially because one of my biggest and only questions coming into this game was whether or not its gameplay formula would hold up. And it was pretty clear from the get-go that it was going to hold up, and then as the game progressed, it actually became crystal clear that it was actually going to surpass it. And of course, I felt that rush of Nintendo nostalgia and magic that many of us feel when playing Nintendo games that only Nintendo can seemingly find a way to consistently provide. Lastly, I really enjoyed the game's cinematic cutscenes, and it just made me instantly think about how cool it's going to be when Nintendo comes out with an animated Donkey Kong movie. Now, if you're wondering how long the game is, to complete all game modes with a perfect ranking, it should take anywhere between 12 and 14 hours, give or take, and of course, how long it actually takes is going to depend on if you do a casual difficulty or a classic difficulty playthrough. Now, when it comes to the game's price, it's actually priced $10 lower than Nintendo's standard new game releases at $49.99, which I appreciated. And after completing the main game and all of the post-game content, I felt like we got a fair deal at $50. Now that we've discussed all the main points, I'm ready to give you guys my final thoughts. As mentioned at the beginning of the review, I didn't realistically know what to expect out of a 20-year-old Game Boy Advance remake. I figured it would be fun, enjoyable, and offer up a nice dose of Nintendo nostalgia, but outside of that, I wasn't really expecting anything else, and at the same time, I was trying to keep my expectations in check. But as each new world appeared, with its own unique environments, enemies, obstacles, puzzles, and level design, I found myself excited to see if Nintendo could keep it up. But cautiously, I figured as I got to the latter half of the game that maybe that uniqueness would begin to repeat itself. But to my surprise, it never did. As the credits finally rolled, I was already more than satisfied with my experience, but as we've been trained to do in cinema, I made sure to wait until the final credits scrolled across that screen, just in case there was anything else to see or do. And for me, that's what really impressed me the most. When the pop-up appeared telling me about the Plus mode, Expert mode, and Time Attack mode, which I hadn't even mentioned yet, that it would likely feature the same levels, but with a higher difficulty. I didn't expect to actually get 72 completely new levels that were not only fun, but offered up a different challenge, with having to navigate myself and Mini Mario to the finish line, with 16 of those levels being way more challenging than all of the previous levels. For me, that's what makes Mario vs. DK a must-buy. So with that said, yes, I highly recommend picking it up, and I would love to hear what you guys thought about the game in the comments section below. Now, as always, thank you so much, guys, for tuning in to my review of Mario vs. DK. If this is your first time visiting my channel, please hit that subscribe button, like this video, and check out my other game reviews or my game collecting series located on my channel's homepage. As always, thank you guys for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you on the next review. What's up, guys? If you enjoyed this video, please smash the like button as it helps me out a ton. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. Over here to the left, you can find all my social media info, or just remember to search for ThunderSteve85. As always, thank you guys for tuning in, and remember, you're never too old to play video games.